Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Let's Get Mental podcast. We are the Young Advisors, and today I am going to be your host. I'm Bri, hello, and I'm joined by Ollie.
Hi.
Harry.
Hey.
And Molly.
Hi everyone.
So just to set the scene a little bit, today is the 11th of November, and this podcast is obviously going to be about everything lockdown number 2 related. So for those of you who don't know, the England went into another national lockdown on the 5th of November, but all being well 4 weeks until the 2nd of December. Obviously we were this is our second lockdown. We went into lockdown back in the spring for a few months, so this is a shorter version. But yeah, we just wanted to discuss how everyone feels about a second lockdown and almost do an update on our first podcast that we did that went out about a month ago now, regarding how we felt about the first lockdown and the prospect of going into another lockdown, because that's been something that's been talked about for a while. So how is everyone feeling? You know, Harry, how do you feel about this second lockdown?
For this second lockdown, I was surprised it came when it did. I felt like things should have been, I think like we should have gone into lockdown a lot sooner. And I think it's confused a lot of people because it's not actually called lockdown. It's national restriction guidelines. So there's a lot of rules. Like I'm still working 9 to 5 in the office. Like I'm in my own office, so I'm not with anyone, but like our centre's closed to the public. There's obviously different rules and regulations about, I mean, you're allowed to mix with people at work as long as you're safe, but you know, you can't go see your family. And but me personally, I'm a lot more chill about this lockdown than I was the first one. I think I was like in denial really about it even happening or that it would have an effect on me the first one. And then it definitely did. So after working through all that stuff, I feel like that this time it's come around, I feel a bit more like confident in myself to be okay, if that makes sense. Like I know what I'm doing. It's weird because Grimsby, where I'm from, today was like named the 4th worst place in the country at the minute. And what's crazy is that during the first lockdown, we had cases, but they were nothing compared to everywhere else. Like, I mean, like under 10 cases. So there was this sort of attitude amongst like people in this town where it's like, oh, it's not here. And then if you look at some of the actual, the cases and the numbers, there was quite a few dates jotted down when we actually didn't have cases. And then it skyrocketed. And now every single person I speak to either has it or is isolating or knows someone who has it. And so I know for locally speaking, I think people have taken this as like okay, we really need to do this. But then at the same time, you have a large majority of people have gone, oh, well, we've gone this long and we haven't had it. So what's the likelihood of me getting it now? And, you know, there's a lot of like natural rebellion, I guess, going on. And obviously we went into lockdown on the 5th of November, which was bonfire night. And I swear to you, I have never heard so many fireworks in my entire life than I have in this last week. Like it feels like every single person is having a full-on firework display every night. The last time I heard fireworks was it last night or the night before? Like they've carried on after bonfire night. I think people are just trying to, I feel like the denial that I had the first time round seems to be happening a lot more this time round, and people are just sort of like, right, it's 4 weeks, get it over with, and we'll be back to normal. And it's just, I don't know, there's just a weird atmosphere in the air. But I'm just trying to, all I can control is myself and my own actions. So I'm just trying to stay positive and stay calm. And I'm thankful I've got work to keep me busy.
Yeah, that's really important. And I think it's almost like we've become desensitized to the idea of, you know, coronavirus is kind of what you're saying. Like at the start, it was this big scary thing that happened all of a sudden, and now we're kind of a bit like, oh right, yeah, that coronavirus, and we've been there, got the t-shirt with the first lockdown, so this one doesn't seem as scary.
Yeah, but like, you know, our hospital is at full capacity. Our ambulances are completely stretched. My manager, her granddaughter, who's 1 year old, had blue lips and blue hands. Was it last week? And it was the sign of a lung infection. Is really serious and really dangerous for a child, especially at that age. And it took 9 hours for an ambulance to get to her. And that was for a 1 year old. And they had said that they basically gave her mum the options of, you can go into hospital. It's full of COVID. A&E's jam-packed full of people with COVID. And they had actually spent 6 hours treating a man who had just had a heart attack inside of the ambulance because there wasn't a bed for him. So it's very much like when you hear those stories, those are the things that are sticking with people at the minute. It's like the actual examples of people dying from this, the knock-on effects it has on the NHS, the knock-on effects it has on ambulances and other people who are ill. People are dying with COVID who have gone into hospital for cancer treatment or because of something else and they've ended up getting COVID and then that's killed them, and hearing about people my age who are in hospital with it, it's starting to hit home now, I think, for a lot more people, which in some weird way is reassuring me because I'm thinking like the case numbers should go down because people should be taking this more seriously. So when the facts are right in front of people's faces, it's a bit hard to ignore. Whereas before it was like, yeah, it's going on around the country and we're all having to lock down, but it's not really here.
Yeah, it definitely feels more, especially for us guys who are in the younger generation. I almost feel like this, obviously with everything about universities and the sort of pubs reopening and stuff, that's something we can maybe touch on a little bit later, and how the youth are getting blamed for this second wave. But I definitely feel that this second wave is starting to be more prevalent in the younger ages, and it definitely, for me, it's definitely hitting home a lot more when I'm like, oh, I know between 5 to 10 of my friends have had COVID. So yeah, definitely agree with that, and hopefully that means that the whole population is starting to realize that this is something that we can't just keep putting off. But Ollie, I don't know what you think about everything.
I think you've definitely both raised some good points, and I think that's one of the issues, I guess, is because it feels like it's been dealt with in a somewhat higgledy-piggledy way, and that we've not had it sort of the plain sailing, like someone like New Zealand, where they had it, got it under control, and had a lot of time where life was, as everyone keeps saying, normal or as close to normal as that was. And I think that's the issue that we're getting is it's never really been nailed down as under control. We sort of had that month where it was eat out to help out, but even then I think people were aware of like masks and certain jobs being told to work from home still where possible. And I think that's one of the big issues we're getting now with compliance, is it's a lot lower because at the end of the day people are so fed up, or they're sort of thinking, well, as much as, I don't know if it's selfish, I think some people are thinking, oh, I just want to get through it. And I think with some people it might just be desperation, that they're thinking, well, I've not been able to see this many people, especially for people who live alone or whatever, that I think there's definitely fewer people. I don't know, I feel it's a bit more Marmite, I guess. I think last time everyone was sort of a bit more afraid of it, but as people have become adjusted, there's the people who are taking it really seriously and being quite worried about it and thinking we just need to be sensible about things, and then people thinking, well, if we just get on with it, then maybe it will go away. And I guess the fact there's no sort of answer set in stone makes that so difficult. I mean, linking back sort of with me, I know last time I was finishing my university degree, so I think this time slightly less stressful in that I'm starting my new job as a mental health support worker tomorrow, so that's essential work, so at least I'll actually be able to see people. I know I'm quite sociable as a person. I think that was one of my issues, was just sort of being trapped away from the world for such a long time, so I'll be excited to have that sort of occupy myself with, and just obviously following the rules. I'm going to be one of the people wearing masks 9 to 5 sort of thing, so that'll be fun. Hopefully I won't chafe my face too much, but yeah, I guess it's just this strange situation where everyone's sort of looking for this fairy tale ending, and it doesn't feel like it's gonna come. I don't know what you're feeling sort of about that, Molly, not to sound too negative
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and I really like your point about like it being Marmite. I think that is really like poignant because I think it's different. COVID cases are different in different places, and people are reacting differently in different places. Because while Harry was saying, you know, his area have gone into like full lockdown, and like everywhere has, but they seem to be really treating it really seriously. My area, because I'm on the outskirts of Birmingham. The first lockdown, they were so worried, and they were so like there's hardly any cars in the streets. And the second lockdown, it's like it's not even a lockdown for us. It's like people are just doing what they were doing before lockdown, which they shouldn't be. It's quite scary. I think I've seen people in groups of like 15 earlier today, and people are just going into each other's houses, and it shouldn't be that way. But it seems like people around my area are just kind of like, oh, it's the new way of life. It's just how it's happening, and it's a bit scary, really. But I also think that maybe it might be because there might have been a fall in cases. I'm not sure, because my uncle went into crisis the other day, and we had to phone an ambulance, and I've had to phone an ambulance before for crisis a couple of times, and both times I've been like waiting for hours because it's, you know, it's not put as urgent. And then I thought with my uncle it would take forever, so I phoned the police as well, and it actually only took about 2 hours, which probably sounds like a long time to some people, but for mental health, I think that's quite a quick time that he actually got the ambulance for. So I think I was quite surprised at how, because I thought because of COVID he would have been in A&E for like a day or two, you know, just because of COVID and the stress on people. But yeah, I think with the first lockdown, I found it really hard to deal with. I found it like it was just such a change. And I think with the second lockdown, it's feeling as if, oh, it's just happening again. I went through it the first time, I can do it the second time. I felt really super prepared because I was always thinking, well, there's going to be a second wave, and people are saying that it's not going to happen, but I'm always worst case scenario sort of person. So I bought all my Christmas presents early, booked all my click and collect slots for groceries because I'm a super organized person. And with the first lockdown, because it seemed to just happen all of a sudden, I found the first month really scary and really worrying because I felt like I didn't have control of anything. But because I could prepare for this lockdown, even though it happened quite all of a sudden, I think I was still prepared for it because I was expecting it to happen. So I was really organised for my well-being and my OCD, because of my well-being and my OCD. But I think that with lockdown, I've tried to use it to my advantage, like with being organised. So I've done loads of things in the house, so like organising the house, just clearing out sections of the house that have always bugged me, but I could never get to because I've been so busy. Yeah, so I think it's the second lockdown for 4 weeks. I think it's going to be easier for me, for myself, but for other people, I think it's going to be harder in some ways. But I think it depends on the person.
Yeah, definitely. So it's almost like, just touching on something Ollie mentioned about the Marmite thing, it's almost like a divided nation now slightly. So I think there's almost pros and cons of this second lockdown. Like you say, Molly, we're all a bit more used to it now, and it's not come as so much as a shock, this second lockdown. And I feel like a lot of the things we put in place during the first lockdown will be able to put in place for the second one, especially for like people working from home and stuff. That's not changed for a lot of people. They've still been working from home throughout summer, and are continuing to work from home and things like that. So less of a change, but also I think that in the first lockdown we were possibly more united as a nation. You know, all the Zoom quizzes we were doing, and all the clapping for the NHS. I know it's quite controversial, but it's something that a lot of people came together to do different things. I know a lot of around by me there was a lot of like treasure hunts that people had put out in the like walks and paths around my house that kids could go and do with their families. There's like people were drawing with chalk on the streets and things like that, and it was a bit more united, I guess. Whereas this time it's very, very different. Like Molly said, her areas not really taking it very seriously, and then in other areas like Harry's areas, it needs to be taken a lot more seriously and is being taken more seriously. But how, touching on what you said there, Molly, about sort of mental health issues. How does everyone else feel about mental well-being in this second lockdown? Do we think it will be easier to monitor our mental health and things, or because obviously a lot of people have gone a long time now without that proper support in place, what impacts do we think this could have? Harry, do you want to start? Oh, Molly, you go.
No, sorry, it's okay. I was just going to say that during the first lockdown, I found it really hard, and I found it quite hard to deal with it. But then I think everyone who had mental health issues, they started to, further on in the lockdown, they started to cope better. They got their own way of coping. I mean, I started focusing on my fitness because I talked about it in a different podcast that should be on soon. But it really helps me to keep fit, to keep energized. And within the month, I was kind of like trying to set up routines for exercise, and that really boosted me. And then I was also having EMDR therapy, which is really weird over the computer, but I've actually ended the EMDR therapy now, and I felt like it ended on a high, and it's a real positive. I think just trying to keep up your routine of everyday life would really help with your mental health and well-being, because I think that's key. I know I've said before that sometimes if I try and put myself into a routine, I can become quite addicted to that routine. It has to be in a set way, and I can really struggle. But at the same time, I try and just make a list and not stick to it like an OCD way of sticking to it, but just be kind of like, okay, I've got to get up. I'm not going to say what time I'm getting up, but I've got to get up, got to get dressed, got to have a shower, got to eat breakfast, and then got to tidy the house. And just those few things, listing it in the morning, it just kind of gives me an idea to get up and get moving. And just having a shower just helps a lot, I find. Just going and having a shower and washing your hair, just simple things like that really help me during lockdown, because I found that lockdowns kind of been like sometimes one of my lowest points when I've been ill with my mental health, because when you're ill with your mental health, you're always stuck inside. And I think that's what's been so hard for me. It's kind of felt like I was just lying in bed again, and I was just at my worst point again. And once I'd started putting into place things like lists and things like, oh, okay, I've got to try and have a shower, I think that's when I started to realize, okay, we can get through this. I don't know about what you guys think.
Harry, do you want to
go? Yeah. I think what happened, I mean, I can't speak for everyone. I know for me, the first lockdown, like looking back on it, it felt like because the world had stopped and because everything had stopped, and I was still working from home, and I was a peer support worker up until, about 3 weeks ago now, where my job was obviously to speak about my past mental health experiences and help young people who are going through it now by sharing and, helping them set goals and all that sort of stuff. So doing that working from home, and then the add-on of this feeling of being in a fishbowl where I didn't realize just how much I had kept myself busy to sort of avoid processing past issues and processing trauma and dealing with a lot of insecurities and a lot of negative coping strategies and thinking styles that I had developed over the years. I didn't realize just how much keeping busy had really stopped me from dealing with any of that until lockdown happened. And it just felt like the fishbowl was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I was getting so paranoid. I thought everyone was against me, even when like they were avidly saying they weren't. Like I was in a relationship at the time and was completely in love, but also thought that this person, didn't trust me. So I immediately didn't trust myself. And then I try and overcompensate. And my best friends at the time and my small group of friends, like even when they were trying to be nice to me, I didn't think they were being genuine. And I was just getting so paranoid and so worked up. And it was all stemming from past things that, you know, up until like a couple of months ago, I didn't really have time to face. And then when I hit a wall and had a complete breakdown, I started going to therapy again. And but when I had a breakdown, I literally stopped everything. I was out of work. I didn't have my phone on me for about 2 weeks. I came off all social media and literally wiped everything clean. And this like overwhelming sense of calm and stillness that came with it was something that really surprised me and shocked me. And I think it was a really big realization of how I had never really wanted to be present. I was always trying to think of the next thing and I was trying to move things on. And if I wasn't doing that, then I was even thinking about the past and how the past could affect my present. And it was like, well, this ended badly. So before, so that means is that this current situation is going to end badly. And then someone spoke about me like that before, which means my current friend is going to talk that way about me. And, you know, I was never ever present. I was never just taking anything for the moment and was never really living. I was just moving like a tornado, and you know, and tornadoes destroy everything in their path. So for the last couple of months, I've been in therapy, and therapy has helped, but I also think I've done a lot of work myself. I'm very proud of myself for the work I've done about just remaining present and putting more positive things into my routine. Like I go for a bike ride nearly every morning now and do meditation every day. And, you know, it doesn't work for everyone. And I was always one of those people at work where I'd suggest it to kids and say, yeah, it's great, and fully knew it didn't work for me. But I just feel like I'm in a different place now. So in terms of mental health for this lockdown, I'm like 95% sure I'll be okay. I just know that I think the only 5% is just the anxiety of remembering how it was last time. But I'm confident in where I am now. I feel like a completely different person now. It feels like I explained it to a friend that when I sort of had this sense of stillness after my breakdown, it was like someone had come in and trashed your house and you was like, who the hell did all this? And it just turned out to be yourself, because that's how like manic everything felt and how just out of control I felt. And it wasn't really about controlling anything or anyone or any situation. It was about me not having any control of where I was myself mentally. Like I just was not okay. And I think lockdown was a massive factor in that, because, you know, people in their 50s who have dealt with trauma continue for the rest of their life being busy and moving on and, you know, having families and having new jobs and all that sort of stuff. And then they stop during lockdown, and then all of a sudden they're thinking about things that happened to them 30 years ago. And I'm saying that because I know people in that age bracket and work with people in that age bracket with patients now in adult services, where lockdown was a massive thing for them, where they had the same experience of things they never want to think about just popped into their head because they had the time to kill, you know, and they didn't have things to do or places to be or people to see because we literally wasn't allowed. So I think a lot of people have gone through a lot of stuff this year. I think it's been a really transformative year. But then on the positive side, you know, I've gone through that, come out the other side, and feel a lot more in control of myself and control of myself, and a lot more at peace and a lot more aware of how to spot warning signs and just, you know, cope with that and move past that and maintain a good routine like Molly was talking about. So yeah, I guess that's where I'm at right now. Where I feel pretty positive and just, you know, really grounded and really present and thankful for what I do have, and just trying to take each moment as it comes, really, you know.
I'm sorry, Bri. No, I think sometimes, Harry, I just think it's amazing how well you articulate things, because I think a lot of people who will listen to this podcast will just be like, yeah, that's exactly how I felt, and you've just articulated it so well. Because when you're saying all that stuff, I'm just like, well, yeah, that's exactly what it was like. And I think a lot of people will connect with that. I don't know about what you guys think, Brian or Lou, but I thought that was brilliant.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I just totally agree with what you said. This year has been, obviously it's been quite traumatic for a lot of people in terms of, you know, losing loved ones and things like that. But I think it has also made us all question things that we never thought we'd have to question. And we've spent so much time in our own thoughts that we've realised things about ourselves that we might not have realised before. I know for myself, I've always labelled myself a control freak, but I didn't quite realise until literally everything was, all your liberties are taken away from you, how much that would affect me. In the first lockdown, it really significantly affected me for quite a while. But for the second lockdown, I think it affected me slightly because I prepared myself in mid-October when the talks were that we'd have that circuit breaker. I kind of prepared myself for that, got all prepared. It didn't happen, and then 2 weeks later, it was sprung on us on Halloween that that we were going into a second lockdown. So I think it did affect me slightly, but for a much shorter period of time, and I knew exactly why it was affecting me, and I almost expected it. I just needed that time to feel out of control and feel like my feelings were valid. And then, but shortly after, got through it and just moved forward. So I definitely think it's made us all realise things about ourselves that we didn't realise before. Ollie, I don't know how you're feeling about, mental health and another lockdown, and especially going into the winter. I don't know how that can make us feel. Ollie?
Yeah, I think I guess I'll start by saying sort of everyone said some really good points there, and I think it's interesting to sort of look at it both on the sort of micro and macro scale and comparing it, I guess, as to are we getting similar effects last time? Are we having things where people have been able to benefit from sort of having to go through that hardship, but then coming out with these sort of developed coping mechanisms? Or are people sort of getting that taste, not really for freedom, but that taste sort of for things being okay, and then feeling that it gets pulled away from them? And I guess I'm not trying to look at it in an entirely negative way. I think I'm trying to sort of address there's definitely positives and negatives to this situation, and I guess that you shouldn't be inclined to feel that you should feel either way. At the end of the day, it sort of is a generational trauma, and for some people they've been able to get through it and cope really well, and for some people it's been a really big struggle, and it will be again, and that's nothing, no comment about anyone's character. I guess linking into sort of second lockdown, I guess one of my thoughts were sort of seeing how it's going differently, and I guess how the government has done things differently. I don't know things on a massive scale, but I know hopefully what could have changed from last time. I know that I'm going into support work now, but I know last time there have been quite a few restrictions in sort of mental health support work in terms of community workers I'm speaking of here, and in some situations where people in dire need of this sort of home visitation were then denied from it, and it increased A&E visits. So hopefully that's some lessons we've learned from this time. And I guess looking at this lockdown, for me, like I said, I guess I finished education this time, so I've got work to have, which I guess is a very different way, I guess a coping mechanism in a way, but I guess the advantage of this one is I'm sort of out there having that social contact adding in, and I can feel like I'm sort of able to potentially make more of a difference. I know that's been spoken about potentially in other podcasts, of sort of that feeling of being able to give back being something that can actually be quite beneficial to oneself. I guess to raise just a couple of points in the area, I know in terms of how it's differed from last time is that I think I feel bad for university students, because I think having been one and then left, it's looking a lot more of a challenge for current ones, especially the fact that they've sort of been lured into this trap of paying for rent and encouraged that everything would be okay, just to then have to pay for it all and be locked away in very sort of small confined areas. And I guess you can sort of see why the compliance then might be lower for sort of staying in rooms following all these restrictions, because it's been very authoritarian. There's not really been much participation, one of our favourite buzzwords. People haven't been given those choices, or they've been smaller, or like people who wouldn't have moved to university because of this have gone and now they're stuck there. I know recently in Manchester there was the whole scandal where they tried to put up scaffolding and fencing to lock the students into the accommodation, which seems a little bit 1984 to me. So I guess with people getting frustrated and the stereotype of it being young people spreading it, I guess trying to put yourself in that situation, I guess you could sort of see why people might feel less able to just rigidly obey this lockdown if they're outside of their support networks and their usual comfort zones. I saw you came off mute, Bri. Did you have anything you wanted to add into that university side? I know you're a student.
Yeah, a student in my third year, so possibly the most stressful year. And yeah, just everything you said. It's really difficult when I know. I don't know if I'm meant to say this, but I know for this lockdown you weren't meant to move from your university to, go home or go wherever. But in all honesty, staying at university for me wasn't an option. It would not be what I wouldn't be able to cope on my own with. I love my housemates to pieces, but they're not my family, and then they're not, my loved ones. So I made the decision to move to my boyfriend's university, and I am currently in lockdown with him, which has been so much better for my mental health. And I don't think I could have done it if I didn't make that decision. But so I guess exactly what you said there, I shouldn't have, according to what the government was saying. But I did.
So the police come into your front door.
No, please don't arrest me. But yeah, and it's just making those sensible decisions, because I made that decision because I knew that if I didn't, I would be in a much worse position and could possibly be putting more strain on certain services and certain people. It wouldn't be fair on the people I lived with to have to, deal with me. So I made that decision sensibly. So I think it's talking about it all sensibly and thinking about it all sensibly, and not to get too political, but everyone has their opinions on how it's been dealt with and how it should have been dealt with and things like that. But I think it's just getting used to the new normal and making sensible decisions constantly with the idea of corona in the back of your mind. And just were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I think, like you were saying there, it's sort of the dangers, I guess, of these restrictions, and the fact that we all know one size doesn't fit all, but because I guess it's a sort of dodging, not being too political, but I guess just speaking the facts, as it were, that we've seemed far less quick to react as a nation compared to some of the others. And I think because of that, there's been more blanket rules. And like you've said, how like for you, technically, if you're going by the book or whatever, you should have done this, but you can't apply these rules in these sort of absolute ways and expect them to not create further problems for a lot of people. I know I mentioned like the restrictions of cutting down support workers, saying, oh, we can't have them mingling households, and then A&E numbers going up, and it's like, well, now we've not got enough hospital beds. So it's like you can't have it both ways. I know another thing being sort of these restrictions being, I think people are still technically allowed to exercise now, but the fact that people are still having to work alongside it, and it's now winter time, you've obviously got these sort of dangers and restrictions that come into play with the fact, for example, I know women or vulnerable people who might have exercised usually maybe after work, and that would have been fine outside, or gone to gyms if it had got dark at this time of year. Now it's a choice of safety, I guess, because if you're restricted to a 9-to-5 schedule, have to then get home and it's like, okay, it's pitch black outside. You're not there. You can't really go out with friends or in a running group. If you're in a darkish area, it suddenly becomes a big safety issue. And then that coping mechanism, and as addition, that sort of element of self-care is then stripped away from your life. And there's not really been anything put into place to deal with these sort of, well, we're going to set these blanket rules, but we need to create these supports in order to allow it to function. So like you said, Bri, it's all well and good to say, no student's allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. And then, of course, people aren't going to follow it, because at the end of the day, people have to, look, you know yourself better than someone else does. And if that's going to be better support for you, then that's good. But if there's some things in that, for example, like, why is there a possibility that they could have introduced some sort of safe ways for exercising, or other things like this, where there's these little issues where people are having to sort of compromise their self-care and their own health in order to sort of function for the good of the nation. And I think this has sort of been thrown around to sort of guilt trip people. But I'm a big believer in sort of your approach and the approach of being sensible and doing sort of balancing the two, because at the moment it feels sort of, if you disobey anything in the tiniest way, then you're single-handedly responsible for the downfall of the country, as it seems to have been thrown at young people, not to be too cynical. But you have to look out for yourself in order to be able to look out for other people, in order to, like you said, look out for those services like that. Sorry to have gone on a big ramble. I don't know if you wanted to say anything different, Molly.
No, it's just when you were saying about self-care and how with fitness and it's going into winter, that resonated a lot with me, because it's quite hard being, you know, I'm a 19-year-old girl who works out a lot. I don't look bad, you know, so it can be a bit intimidating to go outside, because I love to run, but you know, schedules and everything, going outside and having to do it in the dark, it's scary. You know, I've had times where I've had interactions on runs that haven't been very good, because, you know, I don't live in the best area, and I think sometimes it is just that self-care side of it. I find it quite hard to deal with, but I've dealt with it a bit more recently, I've tried to do it earlier, so I've been getting up earlier to go for a run, but yeah, it was quite worrying for me. And you're also saying about university, it's really surprising, because I've never thought I'd go to uni. I thought, oh, I really want to get a job and everything. But then I've turned 19. I'm really missing education, but I still want to work at the same time. And I think lockdown really put it into perspective. Okay, I want to do online uni. And I think without lockdown, I wouldn't have realised that, you know, there are different pathways into uni. And I think because there was my friends that were going off to uni, and they were kind of paying all this money into universities, and they were kind of being robbed, because, you know, you just sitting in your dorm room, not really experience anything else, and like, you know, it doesn't seem fair. So I've kind of like sat back and thought, no, I'm not going to uni this year. And I just applied to Arden University on a whim, and I actually applied and I got in, and I'm starting in January, and I feel just so much more secure in, you know, this turbulent time, knowing that, okay, no matter what happens, no matter where I am, I can just go online and I can do my uni course there, and, you know, it's up to me. But I think it depends on the person, because some people might not be able to do that, because I know that I've taught myself a lot with GCSEs, because I had a really bad time at school, so I kind of just stayed at home and taught myself a lot of my own content, and that, so I'm kind of used to that kind of lifestyle of teaching yourself and doing everything yourself, because I enjoy that. But other people, they're probably you know, it's social groups, you know, it's more than just education. I think university is a whole package, and while it might not be for me, I think some people might really need that. I think that's all I wanted to add on that. If you go, sorry.
No, I think that was really good, and I think going on to that, I'd quite like to finish this podcast with some sort of almost tips and tricks and something going forward that our listeners can get out of it. So does anyone have any tips and tricks they want to share?
Well, I was saying about routine earlier, so just making lists really helped me, so I'll just say that again. And I'd say get a focus, because I remember I was like, it was like a month into lockdown, the first lockdown, and my mum came in and she was like, right, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of me being stressed, you being stressed, because, you know, we live together, and we really have an effect on each other. And she could tell that I was so down. And she said, I'm getting a skip and we are doing the house. And we completely emptied the whole house, and that was our focus. And we've ripped out the kitchen, we've done it all up, we've just redecorated the whole house, we've had new windows. And well, you don't need to go to that extreme, because I always do everything to extremes. I'd just say, just get a focus such as that keeps your mind busy. Because I know Harry was saying, you know, you're kind of in that fishbowl of having to face thoughts. And while I've dealt with a lot of my thoughts, I still find that I get fixated on silly things, well, that are silly to me, really, that still go around in your head, even just because you're anxious. So keeping myself busy was something that I think really helped me. So just anything in the house that you find, like organising, anything that you've wanted to do for a while, just get it done. I think that's all I'd say. That really helped me.
Yeah, I think as well for me, I'd say almost linking on that focus idea that you brought up, but like having something to look forward to. I know at the minute it feels like there's not much to look forward to because you can't really make plans and things like that. But I know for me right now, going into winter, everything's feeling a bit bleak. I feel like I'm constantly, obviously, I'm in my third year of university, so I feel like I'm constantly staring at a computer screen and just everything just feels very grey in my life. So I'm making sure that I am counting down the days till Christmas. I'm putting on Christmas. I'm one of those people already, like putting on Christmas films. I'm watching like Christmas TV programs. I'm listening to Christmas songs. I'm making hot chocolates all the time. I'm going to be baking Christmas related stuff, eating my body weight in mince pies, because I know for me, Christmas is one thing that, regardless of where I am, I'm with my boyfriend at the minute. So even if I'm not allowed to go home, or, worst comes to worst, I will have him here. And it's one thing that always just makes me feel really homely and like everything's going to be okay. So that's what I'm doing. Harry, what's your tip to keep going?
I think my tip. Whoa, there's like crazy feedback. I don't know what just happened there. I'll carry on talking. My tip that I'd give to people in this lockdown is something that I try and apply to myself like every day, to be quite honest, which is just being grateful for what I have. I know when you feel like everything's sort of against you, and I know a lot of people, myself included, struggle with that idea of control. And, a lot of the times it's not even in a malicious way or in a harmful way. It's almost like control out of fear, and it's trying to control things because you think you're trying to avoid bad things from happening. And the more energy you put towards those bad things happening, the more likely they are to manifest themselves. And then you almost justify that anxiety by going, see, I was right to worry for all those months because this is what's happened. When what I actually try and do now is just be grateful for what I do have around me. Be grateful for basic things, be grateful for your health, be grateful for whatever family you have, whatever friends you have. And even if you've lost people in your lives, whether that's through death or whether that's through, arguments or breakdowns in friendships or whatever, you don't have to look back on those things with a sour taste in your mouth. You can be grateful that they happened. And I'm just taking the standpoint of, just because I can put love out there to people doesn't mean it has to be received, and that's okay. That's not it's not my decision as to whether people want to receive that or not, but I can be grateful for good times. I can be grateful for memories. I can be grateful for where I am now. I can be grateful that I'm in a job where I can help people throughout lockdown. Like my job now is working with a social prescribing team that helps vulnerable adults 18 to 75 with health conditions, and we examine everything in their life that causes them stress and try and help out where we can. So I'm grateful that I can do something like that and give back. So yeah, I guess my tip really is to be grateful and choose love, and try it and look for the positives when everything's sort of, it feels like the world's caving in around us. I'm very positive about the recent election news in America. I feel like I won't be shot on sight when I arrive at the airport anymore. I'm grateful for the fact that, COVID vaccines are being trialed, and, it feels like there's hope. So, it's not putting expectations on things, but it's reminding yourself that there is hope. And in even right now, even today, even whoever's listening to this podcast, whatever time of day it is, if you're driving to work, if you're chilling on an evening, if it's first thing in the morning, you can choose what mindset you want to be in for the rest of this day. And when people ask me if I'm okay now, what time of the day, if it's the morning, I'll say I'm okay this morning, because I don't know what the afternoon will bring. I don't know what the evening will bring. I don't know if I'll struggle sleeping again, but I take it sort of day by day, section by section, and really try and stay present. So that's my tip for everyone, is staying present, being grateful, and, putting love out there.
I think that's such a beautiful perspective to take, and it's so true, especially when everything is so unpredictable, just taking it moment by moment and being grateful for what you do have. And I'm just going to say that I'm grateful that we still have the opportunity to be part of this team and part of this group and creating this podcast in the first place. And I'm grateful to anyone listening. So, Ollie, what's your tip?
Can I just also add that I'm also really grateful for Mariah Carey. That's all. I just want to put that out there. I feel like she'll be listening.
All we want for Christmas is you.
Thank you, Bryony.
Usually the reason she's in the charts again.
Yes, stream my Christmas song Santa Tell Me by DNC on Spotify. Thank you. Bye.
She doesn't need any more advertisement.
I was talking about my own Christmas song. How dare you?
Oh, yours. Oh my God, yeah, plug it.
Cool. Sorry, Ollie, I just needed to promo myself there. Carry on.
That's fine. We always like a bit of self-promo. No, I guess my tip, I guess, is on the similar lines of sort of being grateful, but also to think of being kind to yourself. And I think everyone, now that it's been going on for so long, the original sort of 2 or 3 weeks, it was all well and good to say like, oh yeah, well, do you know what? It's been locked down, so I'm going to allow myself this and allow myself that. But I think the more it's gone on, the more this expectation is built that you should have adapted and you should be able to go on by now. It's like, well, if this person's gone out and got a promotion, one of my friends got a job, one of my friends has just moved into a new house, or that sort of thing. And I think people are then back into this position of holding themselves against these standards, and it's just not particularly helpful. And I guess I think one thing I can find helpful is sometimes, instead of thinking of it as about you, but imagine you're speaking to a friend and you're telling them this advice, or you're speaking to a family, you're speaking to someone outside of yourself, even if you're just speaking to yourself in third person, and trying to sort of give yourself a break and thinking, well, do you know what? I might have only done 4 hours work today, and like last year this time I would have done 7, but it's been a really hard year. And like, do you know what, actually, like, let's say I'm speaking about myself, being like, well, why, like, I might be like, oh, that's annoying, that's like everyone else has been able to adapt, why have you not done it? But if I can say, well, actually, Oliver's had a hard year, he's finished his degree, and actually the job plans he was meant to have had all fallen through because it was art stuff, which has been declared by the government a non-viable career, not to be political, but also then going into sort of a recession. And actually, if you take these things into account, how it's affected you and your mood, you wouldn't then turn to one of your friends who'd had a similar difficult situation and said, yeah, do you know what, just buck up. You'd be nice, you'd be supportive, you'd say, it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay that you've had 5 months and it's been hit and miss, and some have been good, some's been bad, and you don't have to feel guilty for still feeling like it's a struggle, and that's okay. And that if you need help, you don't always have to be the person helping other people. I know I can be a bit of a compulsive helper, and sort of being like, well, actually, let's think of other people. Like, let's ignore me for a sec. Like, what everyone else is going through other stuff, and that's worse. But trying to get out of that and think, well, actually, you are allowed to be the one who needs to reach out for support. I know, like, with there's still Samaritans going. I don't know if people have heard of Shout, but they still have their 24-hour text line for sort of similar service to Samaritans, but over text. There's all sorts of services out there that people would recommend to other people, and you're allowed to use these yourselves. You're allowed to say to your friends, it's a bit rubbish, but equally you don't have to rely on people, but say, do you know what, we've both had a really rubbish day. Let's just have a little rant about it and just get it off our chests, and try not to think that you're obligated to feel happy, but you just sort of, it's just getting by, and that might just be how it is for a few months, and that's good. And getting by is actually a really big achievement, and people should be proud of that, and proud of themselves for just doing whatever they can. So I think that's it. It's just keep on going, keep doing what people are doing, and remember to be nice to yourself.
I think that's a really, really important message, Ollie. So just to reiterate, there's loads of resources out there for you to use. Ollie mentioned Samaritans and other call centres and apps and things like Shout. There's also the Headspace app, which has been recommended for some good mindfulness stuff, but we'll put a load of links down in the description for anyone who would like to access some help, because remember, it's okay to not be okay. So if you like today's podcast and wanted to know more, or wanted to get involved, please feel free to contact us via our social media or our website, which will all be linked down in the description. So did anyone have any final thoughts? Did anyone want to finish with like a cute little positive thing or one piece of hopeful advice for the future?
I thought we could all do something like, it's Thanksgiving. Like, this is really American. Like, what we're thankful for. What Harry was saying, what we're all grateful for. Like, something that we're grateful for. So, I'll start because apparently we're definitely doing this now. You've not got any choice. I'm gonna say that I'm grateful for mindfulness and just being mindful and being grateful for who I am and letting things be.
Oh, lovely. I'll go next. Just to say, I am grateful for my friends and my family and everyone that I have around me, and you guys. This group and keeping this job going and being able to just come on to a podcast and talk about everything that's going on. I'm just really grateful for all the people I have around me and my work colleagues / friends. And Harry?
Yeah, I'm really grateful for the ability in all of us to get creative. I've seen during lockdown on Twitter quite a few people who have made like homemade like jewelry and homemade pieces of art and homemade clothing and all that sort of thing, and like starting up their own little businesses, and it's all people our age, and I just find it really inspiring, and people showing off and feeling confident in their talents and people really responding to it, and seeing this community of people who uplift each other and celebrate every achievement of really valid work. Ollie touched on earlier how the arts is sometimes overlooked as a viable job path, but I'm really grateful that I've been able to witness and help support small businesses and lift people up. I think everyone needs lifting up, and if people are creating amazing art and things that are coming from such a genuine creative place, and I think that needs to be celebrated. I'm grateful for the ability to feel like I have some creative bones in my body. Not saying I am Mariah Carey, but that comparison has been made before. So I don't know why you're all laughing at that. Yeah, but apart from that joke, the rest of it was a genuine sentiment.
I thought you were Victoria Beckham last time.
I change. I'm a bit of a shapeshifter, as you know. I sometimes have a different name, a different face. Who knows?
It's diverse.
Yeah, thank you. It's about diversity, which I am also Ashley Banjo, the head of Diversity, the dance troupe.
Ollie, what are you grateful for?
I feel we've covered a lot of good ones there. Yeah, I guess grateful for positivity and all the good that is. I think it's been a roller coaster year, but I think it's looking up, and I think I'm very grateful for that and all the amazing people who've done bits to both in my life and everyone else's. And I guess just that people can be good. And I think sometimes it's hard when everything seems a bit rubbish, but I'm just grateful for all those selfless people, and people are just going out there and doing their bit to make the world a better place.
Ah, lovely. I'm also going to add that I'm very grateful that we have chocolate. So,
Yeah, that's a good one.
Right, I think that's a wrap on today's podcast. Thank you all for listening, and we hope you've enjoyed. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.